In this particular unit, we're going to look at specialized animal cells. Okay, so by the end of this particular unit, you should be able to identify the specialized animal cells and also describe the structure, function, and the adaptation of these particular cells. Okay, here are some specialized animal cells, and you need to identify and explain the role played by each one of these cells in our body. So let's dive in. Nerve cell, also known as a neuron. Okay, we'll begin with the structural part of this particular cell. Okay, the first one, the dendrites, the cell body, the axon, the myelin sheath, node of Ranvier, and the synaptic knob. Okay, now one thing you need to note down is this: the nucleus and the cytoplasm of this particular cell makes up the cell body. Okay, the nucleus and the cytoplasm of this particular cell makes up the cell body. Okay, let's look at the function. To conduct electrical impulses from one part of the body to another. Now let's try to relate this function to our everyday life. Unknowingly, you sit on a pin. You definitely scream and jump out of that particular seat because of the pain that particular pin has inflicted. What is responsible for this response? The nerve cells. Okay. Adaptations. Now when you try to look at the word adaptation, what it simply means is features that allow a cell to perform its roles or functions. Okay, let's look at the first one. Presence of dendrites to collect electrical impulses from neighboring cells. Okay. Second one. Presence of axon to conduct impulses from one end of the neuron to another. Okay. The third one. Presence of a synaptic knob to form a link with other neurons. Okay. So these are some of the adaptations and also the function that you need to know about this particular cell. Red blood cells, also known as erythrocytes. Okay. The outermost layer is a cell membrane. Okay. The central section of this particular cells is a cytoplasm, which is filled with hemoglobin. Okay. Let's look at the function. Transportation of oxygen and small amount of carbon dioxide. Transportation of oxygen and small amount of carbon dioxide around the body. Adaptations. Absence of a nucleus to create more room for hemoglobin. Now, this hemoglobin is a red pigment which has high affinity for oxygen. Now, whenever this hemoglobin reacts with oxygen, it creates a chemical compound known as oxyhemoglobin. Okay, oxyhemoglobin. A second point. Biconcave disc shape to increase the surface area for diffusion of oxygen. Okay. Not only does a biconcave disc shape only has to do with diffusion of oxygen, but also it allows cells to slide through tiny openings within the body. Okay. Sperm cell. Okay, so this cell is divided in three regions. Okay, so we have the head region, the mid-piece region, and the tail region. Okay, now let's try to focus on the parts. We start with the head. Okay, so the head will comprise of the acrosome, the nucleus, and the centriole. The midsection will be made up of mitochondria, and the tail region will have the flagellum. Okay, let's look at the function. Its main function is to fertilize an egg and contribute half of its genetic material to form an embryo. Okay, adaptations. Presence of a flagellum to propel the cell forward. Okay. Second point, presence of mitochondria to supply the cell with energy. So these are some of the adaptation and also the function that you need to understand on this particular cell. Egg cell, also known as the ovum. Now here are two structures. We have the internal structure and also the external structure of an egg cell. Okay, let's try to label the internal structure. Okay, so it is made up of the zona pellucida, the nucleus, cytoplasm, and corona radiata. Let's look at the function. The function of the egg cell is to get fertilized by a sperm cell and contribute half of its genetic material to form an embryo. Adaptations. Okay, the first one. Presence of a zona pellucida to allow only one sperm cell to enter during fertilization. Second point, presence of a nucleus to store half of its genetic material for fertilization. So these are some of the adaptation and also the function of this particular cell that you need to understand.